Welcome. So today I'm here with my friend Jenna McInnes, and she is a student of life, fascinated by the human condition. She's an entrepreneur, human potential coach, health consultant, an avid biohacker, and a gatherer of perspectives. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Martina.
Yeah, so I'd love to ask a few questions, and we're just going to kind of roll from there. But what is it that makes you feel most aligned?
So much comes to mind, but the first thing that pops up for me is community. And I think for myself personally, in these last couple of years, it's been very clear how important community is, how important to have your people. Yeah. But I think I feel most aligned and supported when I'm in community. But specifically, what makes me feel aligned as a singular human being is being in touch with myself, being present with myself, spending time with my dog, spending time with my partner, talking and learning about the things that light me up, that I get excited about. We talked a little bit before, but like alignment is it can mean so many things in so many different ways. And really, I think slowing down, being present, being with your breath, reminding yourself to come back into your body, because so often throughout the day, even myself, I notice like I am somewhere else. It's like the simple things like remembering to breathe, remembering to breathe, remembering to sit down and chew. It's like I grew up never really, like, not in a religious family, but never really understanding when I went to friends' houses, like why they say grace, why they sit down and they have that space between, and regardless of their purpose for it, like I've recognized in my life now that taking that pause to have a gentle reflection upon what you're grateful for brings you into a sympathetic state, so that you're then able to actually assimilate and use your nutrients.
Yes.
Right?
Totally.
Like, that's the fuel of life. Like, I mean, not the only fuel of life, but like if we don't eat, we don't live. So if you're not being present with yourself and in your body, with your feelings and your emotions and your experiences, then you're not assimilating your nutrients. I mean, it's so much more than that, but like your biology will not work the way it's intended to work.
Yeah, that is so true. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me think of like animals, the response that they have when they've been attacked. And I watched this video, I think it was like of a gazelle or something the other day. Maybe it was a deer. I can't remember. But this animal was attacked by a large cat of some sort. And the cat had it for a minute and then let it go. And the animal sat there and you saw its belly, like it started to do breath work.
Wow.
And then it got up and it shook it all off. Yeah. Like human beings need to do that. In the face of like everyday life stressors. And I mean, we experience in one day the amount of stress that you're really supposed to experience in like a 3-month process, like for what we're wired for.
Wow.
Is the latest stat that I've heard. So imagine that you are experiencing that much stress on a daily basis. And it's like, what are you doing to practice coming back into your body so that you can live your life? Because if you're not in your body, how can you be aligned?
Oh, I completely agree. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I often share that example with my clients too, about the animals in nature and how they just like innately know to like shake their bodies off and that's like a natural nervous system regulation response, right?
Mm-hmm. It's interesting to think back about the times where, like, in my early 20s, when I used to go to the bar with my girlfriends at night and dance. Like, I would be the first loser on the dance floor. I don't care what anybody was thinking about me. And I'd probably be the last to leave. And I mean, yeah, I had a few beverages, but I would only drink vodka with a tall water
Yeah.
and lemon. And it's like, I mean, maybe this is so I can look back and justify the years where I was out till really late drinking and dancing. But I would literally dance for 5 hours straight, was super hydrated. And like, if you think about it, movement, so moving your body, moving your lymph, pumping is detoxifying. I was excessively hydrated and there's lots of lemon in there. I mean, the vodka, it's a little bit in a reverse step, but the amount of movement that I had during those years was epic.
Amazing.
And I think the idea these days that, whether we know it or not, this idea of keeping up with the Joneses, you're not just going to see people who are like in the street being like, oh, I just saw a car accident, and they just have like, they're like, I'm just going to shake it off. I don't know if you've ever been to I did this practice with a mentor of mine called the Gateway, and there's a shaking practice where we all have blindfolds on and you just like shake to this really tribal music. And I'm glad we have blindfolds on because, and again, it's like, why don't we normalize it?
Yes, let's normalize it.
Exactly. The idea of thinking about what I look like myself, I'm like, I don't know about that. But normalizing moving energy through your body instead of having it hit you and you going and catching it and then stuffing it, or trying to talk your way out of it. I mean, talking can be helpful, but it doesn't remove the vibration that gets stuck in your system.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Martina, how do we normalize that?
I think we have to just start by doing it ourselves. And it's like, I think change really happens like one person at a time. And there's this quote, I don't know who said it, and I probably can't remember it exactly, but I love cheesy quotes because sometimes they're just like, it's so simple and so true. But it's like, be the change you want to see in the world. Do you know who said that?
No.
I feel like
there was a lot of people who said that, or a lot of people who claim that they've said that.
Yeah, probably.
But yeah, I mean, that comes down to the foundations of like just leading by example, right? Like, I don't know, when you were a kid, if your parents tell you, like, are really hard on you you need to do this and you need to do this and you need to do this, like, what do we want to do? We want to do the opposite.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And it's interesting that we've learned that our most important communication tool is our voice. And really, our bodies are very important communication tools, and even in the same sense as leading by example. It's like if a child watches their parents do something and be a certain way and isn't preached over saying, do this, don't do that, that's what they pick up and they just become. So we need to have like a shaking in the park.
Absolutely.
Afternoon, yeah. My favorite way to move that energy is to just put on a good song that's got a good beat and just move around like a crazy person.
I hear ya. I do that same thing too. Yeah. And it's great when like we, not worrying about what you look like, right? But just letting your body move in the way that your body wants to move. So whether that's a blindfold or whatever helps you, don't do it in front of a mirror. Don't do it around other people if you feel safer that way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Safety is important.
Safety is so important. It is like the foundation.
Yeah. But I don't think when you say to people like, okay, we just need to shake it off, like this is a practice you need to implement, that safety isn't really thought about. And the idea that you need to feel safe in your body in order to embody that, and that often requires movement
Yes.
to get to safety and trusting yourself. And I mean, there's different ways to get to that, but it's safety is so important, and something that isn't, I think, in real life, like, I mean, outside of our homes and our real lives, it's not something that's talked about often. It's like, and same with boundaries. It's like that boundaries is becoming a little bit more of a normal term now, but there's a very special relationship between anger, safety, and boundaries that I think the world could definitely learn a lesson or two on. And again, it's but like, how do you teach the lesson? It's like you lead by example. We can share words like we're doing now on a podcast, and maybe create a curiosity for people, but it comes down to people being curious, right? Like curious maybe why some people have anger issues, which is interesting, even thinking about, like, feel free to reel me in. I like to rabbit hole on all things, but like, think if you've got like a father who's got anger issues, that the child, the father leads by example, and then a child later in life then will likely have anger issues. And anger quite often is just energy stuck in the body. And people quite literally boil over and explode. Right? And it's like that's what you see when people express anger. And I mean, on the flip side of that, like, you have people who know how to work with their anger, who get upset about something, but know how to reframe it and know how to alchemize it, or to take it in and let it move through them, instead of having it get so stuck and built up that they explode.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I hear you. I think that's a key point there, is like that we learn from examples of our parents usually, or whoever raised us, right? And, until you're like 7 years of age, that's when your whole subconscious is developing. So you're just picking up these things in your subconscious. You're like learning, okay, this is how the world works. This is how I respond to life. And then that becomes your default. And so then you're acting from this unconscious place most of the time. And I think, anger is it's an important one to talk about, because, it's important to allow ourselves to feel all these emotions. So if there is something that's making you angry, it's okay to get angry. It's healthy to get angry, but it's about how we express that anger in a healthy way. And so, like, aggression, or, taking it out on someone else, for example, that's not a healthy way to express it.
Right.
But what are some like healthy ways, from your opinion, that we can actually like move and express that anger specifically?
I think it goes deeper than that. Like, there isn't just a magic bullet, or it's like learning the foundations. So no one can make you feel angry. You choose to be angry, and that perspective can not sit well with some people. And really that like crumbles down to taking responsibility for your reactions, because your reaction is just an action, and you create your actions. So really it comes down to taking responsibility for your actions, and being able to notice those things so that you can then choose differently. And because this comes down to neuroscience and the way your brain rewires itself. The more you choose to be angry, the more angry you will be. And I mean, I understand that this can sound like a riddle to some people, like I'm talking in riddles, but I think this really comes down to levels of consciousness and and like the first level of consciousness of like being in a victim mindset. And that's what it's been labeled. I don't necessarily think it should be called that, but it means that like the world is happening to you. And if the world is happening to you and those things are negative, it's quite easy to be angry.
Mm-hmm.
But if you move on to the next level of consciousness where you are a creator of your world, you then can start to take responsibility for the, why does this make me angry?
Mm-hmm.
And because there's always something juicy below that comes down to you not respecting yourself, you letting people take advantage of you, you not taking care of yourself. It's typically like a very strong underlying factor for that stuff. So it's like realizing what an awesome human being you are, stepping into your worth and treating yourself as a worthy human being. And again, like you're going to be like, you're a product of what you learn in those first 7 years of life. Like when your ego develops, it's subconscious, right? So we as young people just think this is the way we are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yes, this is the way we are, but we've become this way as well because of our environment. So I don't know if that was a very convoluted, all over the place way to answer your question, but like I said, there's no magic bullet. It's about taking responsibility. And then, yeah, if you've got built up energy in your body, like you can exchange the word anger, happiness, any emotion, you can exchange those for energy.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning like I have sadness in my body. I have energy in my body. I have anger in my body. There is energy in my body. So what are you going to do with that vibration, with that energy? How are you going to move it? And I mean, for different people, those are going to be different answers.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Absolutely. Yeah. And doesn't the word emotion mean like energy in motion?
100%.
There we go. Yeah. And I like how you specifically said, like, I have anger in my body or I have sadness in my body. And I think that's an important like way to frame it versus saying like, I am angry, right? Or I am anxious or I am stressed, because then you're identifying yourself with those emotions, which is cool.
It's like an enmeshment.
Totally.
It's something that's very prevalent in the world of healing, in the chronic illness sector per se, is anybody who identifies with their illness. So I mean, you could even go to diagnosis. If you're given a diagnosis, it's like a stamp on your identity. I have rheumatoid arthritis, or I don't know, whatever, chronic migraines. And the more you're going to get what you focus on in life. So if all of a sudden you're focused on a diagnosis or you're focused on your anger, you're going to continue to get more anger. And I don't mean focused as in like trying to work on it. I mean, like, if you're like, oh, I'm angry, why am I so angry? And then you just keep getting angry. It's like, that's like the volume button, right? It's kind of tricky.
Yeah. It's like where you're putting your attention, that's where things are going to grow.
Yep. And again, like, I don't know, like what was school for? I didn't learn how to take care of my emotions or my body, or I learned how to do my taxes or like anything in school. And like, why don't we teach embodiment to children? Why don't we teach meditation? Why don't we teach like finding peace? I mean, that's really what meditation is. It's returning to your body and returning home and noticing. And then the more like noticing your inner peace, or maybe you're not peaceful that day, but it's noticing that you're not peaceful and going, oh, but right now I'm going to choose peace and come back to my breath. And, you know, maybe you've got like crazy monkey mind that day and you're only able to like stay in your meditation for 2 seconds and it keeps pulling you out. But it's like every time you remind yourself and pull yourself back to your breath, you're rewiring your brain for peace. You're rewiring your nervous system for safety in your body. But if we're out there running around being stimulated by traffic and people and the news and the constant stimulations we have 24/7, you're not bringing yourself back into your body and finding peace. You're just like a magpie to shiny traumatic things that we store in our tissues.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah. That is so well said. And I think it comes back to something that's been a common theme on this show so far, unintentionally, but it just keeps coming back to it. It's that practice of just being present and being conscious and aware of what's happening. Because what it sounds like is we're going to be exposed to all these stressors no matter what, really. So if we just wake up and kind of let our day happen to us, and then we don't regulate our nervous system, we're not going to feel great. And then, like you said, our bodies are going to hold on to those things in our tissues. So, yeah, how does that correlate with like chronic illness, like you mentioned? Like, I'm just curious about this relationship between, the emotions and the traumas or the stressors that our body takes in. And if we don't get rid of those, what's the result of that?
I have never seen chronic illness not also be attached to trauma. So there's whether there's a physical or an environmental aspect of an illness, there also is usually a emotional root or a traumatic root that helps that stuff to stick in the body. And there's so many different ways you can deal with it, but it really depending on what you're going through too. But like somatic releasing or embodiment practices. I've been testing out mind, body, spirit release, or something called emotion code, which helps to reprogram, your subconscious and move that stuff out of your system. And I mean, 20 years ago, I would have thought this is super woo-woo and like that, whatever, it's crazy. But I mean, if you think about from an evolutionary standpoint, however many generations back, we've come a long way. And our previous generation don't necessarily ever fully understand what it's like to be in our skin now. And I think about like, I had grandparents who fought in the war and, had to see people killed. And, from a gratitude standpoint, I can look and say like, oh, the trauma in my life or the stressors in my life is like the constant construction going on next door, or, it's, or the constant stimulation. It's not that we don't have bodies in the streets at this point. Anyway, but it's really incredible to think about because, and I should caveat this with like, I think we often blame our parents for not giving us a better foundation. But you can only learn and grow so much per lifetime. And I mean this I don't mean this in like how many previous past lives or whatever that I could have possibly lived, but like your grandmother could only learn and grow so much in her lifetime. Your mother can only do that so much in her lifetime, and same with you.
Yeah.
And evolutionarily, we are learning from our parents and grandparents and great grandparents' mistakes. And that's how we grow and evolve. Right? So it's interesting to think about like all of this new stuff. Like even like the word somatic, like, I mean, did we hear much about somatics before Bessel van der Kolk wrote like The Body Keeps the Score? Like that, it's a fairly recent term. And same with embodiment. I feel like it's only been around for 5 years, and that maybe people were practicing embodiment previous to that, but didn't have a word for it.
Yeah.
Or didn't didn't realize that they were practicing something.
Mm.
So I feel like I've gotten way off topic here, but but
Well, that's okay.
yeah, I just it's very fascinating. Like I say I'm a student of life and a gatherer of perspectives. And it's like you can have 40 people experience something and they're all going to tell you a different story.
Mm-hmm.
And so somewhere in those 40 perspectives is like they're all versions of the truth,
Mm-hmm.
filtered through 40 different vessels or humans. And it just fascinates me. It's very interesting to, when it comes back down to somatics and embodiment and our evolution, watching people whose parents, were very open and curious. I mean, that's the sauce of life, is curiosity. If you're not curious and growing, you are dying. And I know that's extreme to say, but think of it like a plant. If you have a plant, if you have a tree in your front yard, it is either growing or it is dying.
Mm-hmm.
There's like very rarely anything in between. It might have seasons of like not like shooting up, right? But it's, you're like, oh, there's some dead leaves on here. We're very much like that.
Yeah.
I mean, we're walking and talking and communicating in very different ways than trees, but it's very fascinating to me to watch how far we've come in such a small amount of time and how much that can be exponentiated. Is that a word? Exponified. I think it's exponentiated. Like how much that can be like compounded. If you even have one person in that line who is focused on growth and evolution.
Yeah.
And that it takes a curious human to wonder, why am I here? And maybe you know why you're here, but be curious about, why did I react like that? Why am I having these feelings in my body? Why did that make me think this way? And to constantly ask those questions to learn how to human better.
Totally. I love that.
Right? Because we want to human better for ourselves. Because like the human experience can be painful. I mean, without dark, there is no light. But I think a lot of people are just trying to figure out, how do they live their best life and step into their joy and their happiness. And in order to do that, it takes a lot of soul searching and curiosity. And I very much believe we're in a time right now where there are an influx of people who are in that curious phase. Which is very exciting.
That is very exciting. I hear you. I'm seeing a big shift happening around us. So it's a very interesting time to be alive for sure. But I really resonate with what you said about, just being curious and like asking these questions and trying to figure out, because I really believe that that's what got me on this journey as well. Like, if I'm not thriving, like, well, how can I be? Right. And I've always been one to take responsibility for my life as well, and not just want to, be a victim, like you said. It's like, switching from life is happening to me to life is happening for me. How can I, be a co-creator of my reality, really?
Yeah. And then beyond that, getting to a place for life is happening as me.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. Right. Like there are more levels of consciousness. But I think it's pretty easy for us to be in victim consciousness, because I think that's what was modeled for a lot of us.
Yeah.
And I also think that there's maybe a process like that humans have to go through the process of getting to like getting there, like that you don't just, well, actually, maybe we are born being these like infinite little beings who are letting life live through them.
Mm-hmm.
But then we're actually regressed and while we're taught things while our ego in that first 7 years while we develop. I mean, who knows, but
I think so.
yeah, because as we develop, it's like that's when we learn where our safety and where the boundaries are. And it really, really depends on who models that for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so are your parents conscious of what they're modeling? And I mean, it could be as simple as like, I don't know, parents fighting in front of you. And it's like, people are going to have arguments or disagreements once in a while. It doesn't mean you had bad parents because they had a disagreement. But in the first 7 years of life, that stuff can really shape you. And trauma is trauma, like whether it's the little t or capital T trauma, it's those things are what shape us and keep us playing small
Mm-hmm.
in our lives. And until we learn to recognize that and to work with that, you can actually alchemize it and flip it over and turn it into a superpower.
Absolutely.
Right. And it's all about perspective. So when I say I'm a gatherer of perspectives, and when you think about like those 40 people being told the same thing and everybody having it or experiencing the same thing, but everybody having a different story. Think about it like this. You're in your grade 9 class being taught, I don't know, algebra, whatever you're being taught. And we're all going to see it differently.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, algebra is probably a pretty bad example, but history,
Yeah.
let's say, we're all experiencing that differently. We all have questions that bubble up in our world, being like, I wonder if this, and I wonder if that. And it's fascinating to me that we are not more, how do I say this? Outwardly unique in our approach to life. Does that make sense?
I think I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the systems that we're taught through. So, like, let's say just the regular education system, it's like, here's the one way of thinking,
100%.
Yeah.
And quite often we're being conditioned to all think the same. And I'm not saying that school is a bad thing, but it's the importance of teaching kids to ask, what if? And why not? And to experience other perspective.
Yeah. Ask questions, question everything.
100%.
Yeah. One of my mottos is like, question everything and then ask your intuition for the answer, which takes that, reconnecting to your body, that embodiment, so that you can hear your intuition.
Well, just like I was saying about the tree, you're either growing or you're dying. You're either open or you're closed and rigid.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're closed and rigid, you're not learning, you're not growing. If you know the answer and you are not open to and you might know the answer of something, but if you are not open to the possibility that it could be different, and this is a common theme in our lives right now with everything that's going on in the world. It's like people make choices based on their own life circumstances, and you can either see those people, and maybe the choices don't align with what your choices are, and you can either see those people from a place of fear or see those people from a place of love and trust that they're doing best for that. But if you're on the fear side of it, it's like, no, you can't think any other way, or you're the devil. You're a horrible person. Right? Closed, rigid, not growing.
Totally.
And there's a big fear. I mean, we can go back to emotions and pushing things down in your body. And I mean, there's an explanation for all of that with what's been going on in our current climate. But there are a lot of people out there right now who are learning that it's important to take responsibility for your life, for your emotions, for your actions. But there are also a lot of people out there right now who are scared and they are closed and they are not growing and they do not want to take responsibility because they've been told all their life that they don't have to.
Right.
And they don't know any different.
Mm-hmm.
And usually you have to get pushed to a point of having to take responsibility.
Yeah.
You know, where you can no longer stand in the victimhood camp because it's too painful.
Mm-hmm. I completely resonate with that.
So you got to alchemize your pain. You got to take responsibility, which is painful to look back and be like, oh God, is that like, did I did that? I did that to myself. But let me tell you, once you learn how to take responsibility for yourself and how you show up in life fully, it's really easy. Like, it's really easy just to say, that doesn't fit for me. Sorry. Bye. This doesn't and again, being open to other people's perspectives, being curious about what people have to say. And it doesn't have to align with what happens for you, but it doesn't make the other person a bad person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Totally.
And I think our governing bodies, or our, what was the word you used earlier? Just like the educational system, we're all taught things in one certain way.
Yeah.
And this is not what we're taught.
I agree. Yeah, there's so much missing. Like if the educational system, like you mentioned earlier, if we actually taught kids embodiment, right? How to be present, how to regulate our emotions, how to connect to our intuition, we'd be in a completely different place. And I hope that the education system is moving that way.
Yeah.
We'll have to start a new one.
Well, and I mean, there are shifts and changes you hear about. And I think that also comes through what we were talking about as evolutionary, like going through, like our grandparents to parents to, like, I heard of kids learning yoga and kids learning, and yoga doesn't have to be your thing. Like, there's many different ways for you to get back into your body and to connect with your breath. And I mean, hey, sometimes even when I say that out loud, it still sounds like hokey to me. But it's not. It's so not. But I have been conditioned in previous years of my life to think that way.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And those things still creep up. But in order for me to take responsibility for my feelings and for my life, I have to breathe. And that's not a trick wording there. Like, we're all breathing every second of the day, but like, you have to consciously step into your skin and breathe. Because when you are not in your body, you usually have exited for a reason. And quite often it's because you're in pain. And whether it's physical pain, whether it's emotional pain, whether it's physical pain manifested from emotional pain, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But in order to take responsibility, we have to step into our skin and feel those things. And there are people out there who don't know how to feel and have been going through that all of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And the longer it takes for you to get to that point, the more painful it typically is.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, no one's a lost cause. Like, you can start any time. But let me tell you, if you had a parent who was modeling this for you when you were very young, it's probably going to be easier.
Totally. Yeah, that is so true. I mean, Yeah. Yeah. I agree that like we've been conditioned kind of like away from these innate ways of being, right? Like you said earlier, I feel like, yeah, we do come into this world like being connected to our body, right? Where we express emotions as babies, as infants. And we know that like safety is super important.
Mm-hmm.
And then somewhere along the line, yeah, we lose that sense and that connection with ourselves. So it makes a
Mm-hmm.
lot of sense. Mm-hmm.
I recently watched a documentary. It was Taylor Swift made a documentary about one of her albums. And I watched it one afternoon and she was describing one of her songs and a couple of the lyrics in it. And she talked about this time. She was like, when did I stop screaming? Like, when did I stop expressing myself? Like when you're a kid and you're having a hissy fit and you're something you want your sippy cup or whatever it is, and you throw yourself on the floor and have a tantrum. And she's like, when did I stop doing that? When it came to like the injustices in the world and the things that she saw, or that's how I took what she was describing anyway.
Mm.
And I think that there's been this repetitive pattern for a long time. And back to some words I said before, the keeping up with the Joneses, is that pre-pandemic, I think that there were a lot of people who didn't even realize, weren't consciously keeping up with the Joneses. But it made me realize how many people out there are like driving their big fancy cars and they have a big fancy house, but those are the biggest golden handcuffs out there because the bank owns all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Really? And that people buy those things and buy all of these labels to keep up with the Joneses. Right? Like we've been marketed. Like I remember high school, like you had to have the coolest, newest thing in order to be cool. And that comes from not only marketing, but our parents teaching us by leading by example.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
And everyone's doing the best they can with what they know, right?
100%.
We don't know better, we can't do better. And then it takes, those questions and those people to become conscious to, yeah, to reevaluate like the way that I've been living my life. And is this actually serving me?
And the only way to do that is if you're open.
Absolutely.
And it's scary. I mean, going through that process, you can be open and your body, again, if you're wired to be angry and closed, if you finally make that decision and you commit to it, your brain from a neuroplasticity standpoint will continue to ping you with the fear and with the anger. And it's the noticing and then the noticing and being able to choose, like, this is not who I want to be. Why does this make me angry? What's the root of this? How do I get below it so that I can control it and choose differently? Like that's the important thing, is that, like, again, people don't understand that we choose everything. I was at a seminar once, probably about a decade ago, and they told me that I chose everything in life, and I got real upset. And which is such a valuable lesson, because it took me like 2 or 3 days to really understand. I'm like, here, I'm paying money to go to this thing, and they're telling me I'm choosing, as a child to have a chronic illness, that I've chosen this, like, WTF.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to realize that, like, oh shit, I chose that. And I mean, I still sometimes have a hard time with it, and I'm always learning and I'm always growing and recognizing and noticing
Mm-hmm.
that on some level I chose that. And I mean, whether you believe that you choose your parents and that you come into this world choosing your parents and being put on the path, like, regardless of what your beliefs are with that, given the circumstances I grew up under, I could have chose to be indoctrinated and to keep listening to people who were hurting me that was painful, and just saying, well, they know best.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone else says that they know best, so we better listen to them. And like I said, you got to get to a point where it's too painful to not pay attention.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think you're so right with that. It's like, what is it going to take for us to really like wake up to this reality that we do get to choose?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that comes with being conscious, because otherwise we're just unconsciously going about our life. We don't realize that we have choices, so we're not consciously making them. And then usually we're operating from that place of fear because we're not embodied and we're not feeling safe.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think an important part too is to have compassion with ourselves. Once we do realize, like, okay, maybe I have chosen these things that haven't worked out for me very well, that have been creating a lot of pain in my life and suffering. But now that I do know, now I can consciously shift. And the beautiful thing there too is that the shift from fear to love is by definition a miracle.
Yeah.
So like we get to create miracles whenever we want. How beautiful is that?
That's amazing. And
Yeah.
I mean, compassion is a key foundation to everything, because I mean, you're not going to make that shift without compassion for yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
you might go through phases where you notice you're not having compassion with yourself, but that's like a full stop to not moving forward. Because at the end of the day, it comes down to you being fully embodied in yourself, loving yourself, moving from a place of what is good for me, what is the best for me. And that's not selfish.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It's like getting up in the morning and I mean, you could be having a conversation with anybody. Like you're going to go for a walk with a girlfriend and you say what you want. You say, I would like to stop here. And then maybe you have a confirmation and you compromise. But realistically, it's like there's so many people out there who have been modeled and taught to keep up with the Joneses and to just go with the flow and do what everybody else wants to do and wear the Prada shoes and get the, whatever it is, I call them the rules. I think it was Vishen Lakhiani who coined it, the bullshit rules of like, you need to get married, you need to like go to the Ivy League school, you need to have 2.5 bathrooms and the white picket fence. And I mean, from my perspective, all of that is a bunch of golden handcuffs.
Mm-hmm. And if that's what feels good for you, like truly, then
Yeah,
absolutely. But
100% doesn't feel good for me.
yeah,
And that's okay.
yeah, I'd be a failure looking at that, right?
Right? Like,
I'm almost 28 and I'm not married. I don't have a house.
preach. But that's, again, it's like, I would rather be handcuffed to my growth and my evolution than have the golden handcuffs of a mortgage and a bunch of kids. And I'm not saying any of those things are bad, but again, perspective. It's like what works for one person's not going to work for the next. But we have been modeled, all of us, the same thing. I mean, think of every Disney movie you've ever seen. to be the princess and to find Prince Charming, and God forbid your Prince Charming is the same sex as you. Like, I mean, like, just let people be who they're going to be and do what they're going to do, but do it from a place of self-love, reflection, and responsibility.
Yeah, 100%.
Because if everybody stepped into that, we would not have the problems that are happening in the world now.
Yeah.
And people also realize that the powers that be don't have our best interest at heart. That the only person who has your best interest at heart is you.
Oh,
Let me repeat that. The only person who has your best interest at heart is you. And let me tell you, if your partner doesn't have their best interest at heart before you, that's not good. It's not selfish. I mean, hopefully you're like you're second to your partner, but your partner has to take care of themselves first. They have to lead by example. And we all have to do that. And I mean, yes, sometimes there's compromise, but if everybody stepped into their own love for themselves, and they knew what that was, what that felt like, how they can move the harmful, negatives, toxic stuff that gets stuck in their body, take responsibility for it. And it creates so much more room for love.
Mm-hmm.
And also places the responsibility of the fear on you. So instead of listening to governing bodies or the powers that be say, this is what you need to be afraid of, you better be afraid. When you take responsibility for your own life, you choose what you want to be afraid of. And I mean, like, it is kind of, it's a universal rule that the more you focus on something, the more of it you will get.
Mm-hmm.
Notice how I didn't say if that was a negative or a positive thing. So if all you do in your life is sit at home and watch constant negative news network and think about all the fearful things, that's all you're going to see. Totally. I mean, you can remove all that and say, hey, I'm going to think about white cars, and I'm going to point out every white car I see. And let me tell you, you will start seeing nothing but white cars. Like that, it's just how our brains work.
It's the reticular activating system.
There you go.
Yeah, which can work for us or against us. So you could be like, okay, I'm going to choose to show up every day with love, with joy, with gratitude. How can I make this the best life possible for myself? And then that joy is going to radiate from you and affect other people. And that is how we shift the consciousness.
100%. But it all takes responsibility, because so many people don't even know that what they're being fed, they're feeding.
Mm-hmm.
And until you take responsibility and, choose to turn the news off, or choose to practice embodiment, or choose to stop and feel your breath and experience your breath, you're never going to notice it until you stop and do it, until you create and rewire your brain. Guys, we know this is a thing now. Notice, shift, rewire. The more you notice something, the more you choose differently to shift it, the more that reticulating activated, what did you call it?
Reticular activating system.
There you go. The more that shifts into what you want. So, I love this about my best friend. She has tattooed on her foot, what do you want? It's tattooed so that when she looks down, she can read it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right. And I suggest everyone out there to think about what they want and ask yourself what you want, and then ask yourself what you want probably about 30, 40, 400 more times, and get to the real root of what you want. Mm-hmm. Because you might go, what do I want? I want a new car. What do I want? I want peace on earth. What do I want? You could do that until you might get down to something like, what do I want? I want to feel safe in my body.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, if everyone out there was walking around feeling safe in their body, this world would be a completely positive and different place than it is. And again, there's no light without the darkness. So I'm not saying what's happening and how people are is a bad thing. It just is different. Mm-hmm. And all I'm suggesting is that there are possible ways to deal with your pain and to choose what you want in life instead of to be a victim of it.
Yeah, so well said. I completely agree. And I also think, like, this is from my perspective, so I'm curious to hear yours as well. But we can also choose to see these painful times and these traumas that we've maybe experienced throughout childhood as a gift. Because from my own experience, I would say that for me, having thyroid issues, autoimmune problems that started at age 12, and then I can root back to like why that was. But by the time I was 22, I felt like complete shit and I was not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I was like eating healthy and I was exercising, I wasn't well. And so that was my kind of wake up call where I was like, okay, what can I really do to shift and how can I feel good and how can I have energy? And that's when I really began to start taking responsibility for my life. So I would say, yeah, sometimes if we can kind of reflect on these times of pain and like how can that pain turn into more of like a purpose in a way.
100%. So like I was saying about with darkness, there is always light. Your perspective, you could have told me that story in a couple different ways, right? And this is the beauty of choosing how you see the world. Because, so say you go in and you interview for a job that you really want, and then you don't get it. You could choose to see that as I'm a failure, I'm not good enough, I'm whatever, negative side. There is always, in every single situation, there is a positive and there's a negative, and there are also several other perspectives in between. You could also choose to say, that wasn't meant for me.
There's something better.
There is something better out there, and I'm going to keep working, and it's going to come along. But the key with that is believing it, right? Mm-hmm. So on the one side, you could have said that like, I'm a failure, I'm not good enough, I'm whatever. And if you're saying that, you likely believe it, right? And so you could say the same thing about everything you just said to me there about alchemizing what you experienced. And it sounds like you've alchemized what you experienced. And yes, I can look back, same as you, I can look back and be grateful for how many freaking times I've had a mold exposure in my life. Like, it's taken me a few times to learn that lesson and to stop calling it into my world. Because this is, again, like, it overlaps with the healing community. It's like, if you identify with something, you're going to keep calling it in. So if you continue to say, I have thyroid problems, guess what? You'll continue to have thyroid problems.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. And I've actually consciously made that choice. Like, they say, oh, there's no cure for autoimmune conditions. And I could live my life being like, oh my God, I have this chronic illness. There's no cure for it. And like, that would automatically put me into a victim state. But I choose to live my life with energy. Therefore, I'm like, I don't identify as somebody with an autoimmune condition or with a thyroid problem. I'm like, oh yeah, I used to have a thyroid problem, but not today, not anymore.
100%. And again, we've just been conditioned. We haven't grown up in a world where that was okay. Like all of what you just said. They'd be like, okay, crazy girl. You can say you don't have it all you want, but you do. But the thing is like, you and I know, if you take responsibility for it and you do the work to take care of yourself. And I mean, the thyroid is connected to, it's like your throat chakra, expressing yourself. I mean, there's probably a tie there. You probably know all about it.
I know.
Right? And it's like, sorry, I don't buy into you telling me that I have this for life or that this is how it's going to be, because if I buy into it, it's happening.
Yeah.
And don't confuse me for like you denying it. Like, you don't have to deny that you are having an issue in your thyroid area when you did, right? But again, it's stepping into taking responsibility for it. And what are the steps I can do to take care of myself? And how do I continue to be mindful of that and continue to move forward without some giant label stamped on your forehead saying you're going to have a thyroid disease forever? Because when the medical system does that to us, it's kind of a life sentence. I mean, it is a life sentence in their eyes. It's a life sentence, and there's no other way to look at it.
Yeah, and it's extremely disempowering. And unfortunately, we're taught that like these people know more about our bodies than we do. And they only maybe had a 10-minute consult with us, and we've lived in our bodies our entire lives. And I think that that comes back to, again, taking responsibility of like, this is my body and I know it best. Right. And therefore, I'm not going to give my power away to somebody, you know, I think they call it like white coat syndrome or something.
Okay.
Where you like look at this doctor and you're like, I'm going to give all my power away to you. And I'm going to trust that you know everything that's best for me.
It only takes them messing up a few times for that to change. You know, in my case, I was given a couple different prescriptions that all made me very worse, a lot worse. And they were just like, you're going to be on these the rest of your life. And I'm like, yeah, nope. Nope.
Yeah. And do they ever ask about root cause or lifestyle choices?
No. And this is the thing is like, is it's interesting being a member of like the healing community. There are a lot of people who are working through different layers and levels of chronic conditions and illness, and it's very interesting to witness these people, and again, it's gathering perspectives, so listening to people's stories. And I don't know a single medical professional, like we're talking doctor, like not naturopath or functional medicine practitioner, but like I don't know a single doctor or vet for that, like if you're thinking about for your pets too, that focuses on root cause. And if you think about it, the pharmaceutical companies are where the money is made. So, you know, I mean, we could rabbit hole so many ways here, but like birth control, like I was put on birth control at like, I think I was 13 to regulate my cycle, and was on it for a very long time, and they weren't able to regulate my cycle. And then they put me on Depo-Provera, which is a shot where like now there's been some big lawsuit that it can like severely cause big problems in people. And I was on that for years. I didn't get a period for like 8 years.
Oh, wow.
And this is all for better for my health. This is for me, you know, and it took me a long time to realize like, none of this is addressing the root cause. And the root cause is always attached to an emotion. It's not just an emotion. It's like, for instance, if you have something like H. pylori, or you have like a bacterial infection, that infection has only been allowed to overgrow in your system because the environment has shifted to where it is hospitable to that. It's like there's new people who want to move in because there's room, right? But if it was all populated with the good guys, then you'd be good. So it comes down to like dysbiosis. And I don't just mean of like your gut microbiome or your bacteria, but if you really zoom out on things, they say now, I think we're over 54% bacterial. Okay? We know we have parasites. Parasites are good things. I mean, not in an overgrowth situation, but if you have parasites are in our bodies to help keep toxins off of our tissues. Okay. We need them to a certain degree, but when they overgrow, it's bad, right? We have a fungal microbiome. We have a skin microbiome. We have a gut. You are more bacterial than you are human. And if for 1 second you think that you are all human cells and you are sterile, you are a consciousness of many different things that, like, for lack of a better way to say it, like this table, like this chair I'm sitting on is not solid. It appears solid, right? It's like we are symbiotic beings. Deeper than that, you want to think about like your neurotransmitters that make everything in your body function are created from your gut bacteria.
Wow.
So think about it. If your gut bacteria are out of balance, you're going to act weird. You're going to act different. You're not going to be the way, and you can change your entire gut microbiome in one freaking meal.
Wow.
One meal. So to say that like, oh, this person has caught this or has this ABC disease, you have this for the rest of your life, is to say that your biology is fixed.
That's not true.
My entire microbiome can change in one meal. I'm pretty sure I could probably make some better decisions for myself and take responsibility and do what I can. And there's a process in learning. You're not necessarily going to do everything right. Like failure is a good thing. The more you fail forward, you learn from every mistake you make. You're never going to get it 100% right on the first, and you don't want to. It's like so many people are afraid of failure, but that's like part of the secret sauce to life. Like failure is how we grow.
Totally. Like how boring would life be if we just had everything handed to us? Everything was like perfect.
Yeah.
What would we do all day? What would we do?
Yeah, exactly.
Like part of me was like, is like, I'd love to go on a vacation and just like chill by a pool and just, sit in the sun and read a book. But I'm like, I couldn't do that every day for the rest of my life.
No.
That's like a week. And then I'm like, okay, but now what? Like,
Well, right. And like, I mean, maybe you crave a vacation because you're trying to seek balance. Often when people are constantly seeking something, it's they're not comfortable in their skin. It's like if you're overstimulated and you constantly need the next stimulation, it's because if you slow down, you're going to feel what's happening in your biology and it's uncomfortable. But like for what you just said, like, okay, so maybe you've been going a little bit fast for a little while and you just really, like, all of us, again, the amount of stressors you see in a week are more than what you're supposed to see in a year or something along those lines. No wonder you're seeking a beach.
mm-hmm.
All of those electrons, you can recharge, you get your sunlight, read a good book, turn off, throw your phone in the garbage, just completely disconnect, and then you're ready to come back.
Yeah.
And that's what meditation can do for, or breath work, or even just having mindful moments with yourself, like spending time brushing your teeth and being like, I am brushing my teeth right now. What does this feel like? Instead of like brushing your teeth and being like, what am I going to do today? What am I going to cook for dinner? And your brain's going a million miles an hour and you're like, I could do squats right now. I could like, how can I maximize the time? And it's like, we again have been conditioned to be in a world where you are constantly being stimulated by marketing. You're constantly being stimulated by fear. You're constantly being stimulated by keeping up with the Joneses. You need to pay your rent. Rents are rising, make more money. Like, it's exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
No wonder
to be productive every minute of every day.
And guess what? You are a valid and valuable, beyond valuable human being, regardless of whether you are being productive every single day. Because let me tell you, if you are somebody who is like got a goal and you are productive every single day in that one thing, you are going to fail at life. You are going to fail like in other aspects of life. Like you don't just work. You also live.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's so many more aspects to what life could look like. And there are so many people you see out there who just go, I need to be successful. And all they do is work. And then they fail at humaning. They fail at sleep. They fail at relationships. It's like life is about balance. And until you're, again, able to step into your own skin and your own body and be able to come from a place of, this is what I need, this is what's right for me, instead of keeping up with the Joneses and keeping up with our conditioning, doing it from a place of love, until you can figure out how to do that with responsibility. And it's a constant practice, Martina. Like all of us are triggered by things, and that is just another opportunity for you to notice that you're being triggered, to get curious about, what came up there? What's that about? And then to dig underneath it and to find some peace, and to put whatever that feeling is at peace, to validate it. Because quite often, again, those things are just suppressed, pushed down. I'm too busy to deal with you right now. Whatever. And the people who are more focused on work or on things external of their physical being are 100% more likely to have to deal with this at some point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like in our world right now, the entrepreneurial spirit, it's like you see people who are just like, you need to work hard, work harder, and then work hardest. And oh, you're burning out? Like, that doesn't happen. You're going to lose your company. Keep going. And it's like, how do we build a life where you can do what you love to do it at a pace you love to do it at? And I think there's a really smart thing there about also realizing that you don't have to keep up with the Joneses.
Oh, yes, I totally hear you.
Like the minimalist idea of lifestyle. And again, this isn't for everybody, but like over the last 3 years, the less stuff that I have, the better.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're physical things that take up energetic space. And whether you're technically thinking about them or not, they're taking up space. And I don't know about you, but the idea of having some big house with a bunch of rooms in it, it doesn't resonate with me, because what am I going to then have to fill those rooms with? I'm going to have to go out and buy a bunch of stuff that I don't necessarily need. And I'm not saying like, yeah, it'd be nice to have a house where I have a guest bedroom and I have an office and I have a little bit of space, but like these people who are like, oh, I need the 4 bedrooms and I need all of this stuff. And it's, again, I'm not trying to make it a bad thing, but in my reality, in my perspective, through my lens of life, it's more physical stuff that I have to maintain. And I want to it's hard enough for me to focus on maintaining me, my close relationships, and my work that I love, and my passions.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing, and I guess that comes back down to what we value, like what our values are. And I mean, if I valued having a bunch of children, like maybe having a huge house would be a great thing for me. But that's not something I value. Dogs, maybe. But I don't know. I feel like everything that we've talked about here has so many tentacles and layers that could be unpacked. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to, are you doing the best that you can do for yourself? And because if you do that, then you lead by examples for others. And if you learn how to love yourself, you can teach other people how to love themselves too. Or at least model it and give them an opportunity to see that they can choose differently.
Yeah, 100%. Completely agree. It's like that healing starts with us.
It does.
We have to put ourselves first. It's like the whole oxygen mask on a plane scenario, right?
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not selfish.
No.
It's necessary. You're actually doing everyone else around you a favor by taking care of yourself first.
100%. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the biggest lie we were ever told.
Yeah.
Is that you need to take care of everybody else around you first. you see all of, and it was, I mean, that was my mother. My mother tried to take care of us and put everything into us. But like, I don't think she realized that she was not leading by example. Right? It's like the whole people pleasing situation. It's like, I became at a very young age a people pleaser. I was always looking to learn and grow, but like, how do I put myself in a position where I can help these people and that I can be valued because of it? And it's like, how can I fit that now? Like, I can look back at that, be grateful for it. And again, I'm choosing to be grateful for it because I could choose to look back at that and go, oh, that was icky.
Yeah.
But no, I choose to be grateful for it because it helped me to learn how to not put myself in pain, to take responsibility, to love myself, to take care of myself, and lead by example.
Totally. Yeah, I really do believe that a lot of those things, I know we mentioned this earlier, but just to go a little bit deeper there, like those painful things can be seen as a blessing in a way, because the way I see it is like, let's say that that wasn't an issue for you and you were just kind of like, steady in that area. But if you've been down here and like the pain of it, like people pleasing, and then realizing like how much pain that's causing for you, you're going to put more effort than the person who's here. And then you're going to end up here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm using my hands, but
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's all about, it comes back down to being open and curious. Because if you're at a certain level and you're not open and curious, you may grow a little bit, but if you're open and curious, you're more likely to grow a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And I also understand that that's not everybody's first thought. People are thinking like, how do I grow? I personally feel like it's my purpose on this planet, like one of a couple purposes, but is to evolve and to grow and to learn and to share my process. And is this going to resonate with everybody? No, it's not. And that's okay. And that's the thing, is like, I'm okay to say that this is what works for me, and this is what I believe, and this is what I think. And if that doesn't work for you, that is totally okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that right there is the very definition of being open and curious. Because if I wasn't okay, I would be rigid and closed.
Oh, totally.
And nowadays, I'm sorry, but I am allergic to rigid and closed people. Because in my experience, rigid and closed people are somewhat stuck in that victim consciousness, and they don't know, and whether they don't want to be or not, is that they don't necessarily understand that they can choose better for themselves, and that it's possible to choose better for themselves. Mm-hmm. And I don't necessarily think that this message will resonate with those types of people, right? And it's like, I can only, like attracts like, right? Like, we're only going to attract the people who resonate with what we're talking about. And again, like, with open hearts and open minds and curiosity, it's like, maybe, hopefully, we've sparked somebody here to get interested or to be more curious about their process and about how they can rewire their brain and how they can take responsibility and how they can grow. Mm-hmm. As really, at the end of the day, like at the end of our lives, when we look back and think, what was this for? It's for our future generations.
Yes.
And I don't, like, looking back at my mother's childhood, or like the things I've heard about my grandmother's childhood, like, there isn't a lot good that I've heard about. And I mean, there also, I mean, you can put in the caveat there that people tend to talk more about the trauma, like things like that stick more. But I would love to see us get to a point where, generations in the future can look back at their childhood and can say, like, how much we've grown, like how much easier is not the right word, but like less painful, how they could choose to be in pain. I mean, life is going to be life. There's going to be trials and tribulations and experiences, and they're going to be hard, and they're going to be good, and they're going to be bad, and they're going to be all the things. But what a great gift it would be to have the future generations be able to look back and being like, I had to live through life, but I was able to choose how I felt from the get-go, and able to understand and just be life. I was able to be in my skin and experience life and not take it all personally.
So powerful.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. It's like, I had somebody tell me years ago, they gave an explanation kind of like people being themselves, and anybody could take me being themselves as an offense if they wanted to. And my intention is to not say offensive things, like, and if somebody chooses to take what I say offensively, like, that's their choice. But they explained it like people go around laying knives out on the table. Like, for instance, you could say like, we could have a date. You and I, we're going to go to a movie tomorrow night. You cancel on me because you're tired. And you're like, you know what, Jenna, I just really need to have a night to myself. Like, let's reschedule. And I could choose. So that could be you laying a knife on the table. And I could choose to be like, pick it up, stab myself with it. Being like, Martina canceled on me because she's being selfish.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like what we choose to interpret it as.
Exactly.
And taking things personally, right?
And when people take things personally, it's they're choosing to see people laying out knives for them, when that, I guarantee you, is not, like, we are, like you said earlier, we're all trying to do the best that we can. And I mean, unless you're a sociopath and you're out there like metaphorically lying out knives just to see how people are going to react. Typically people don't operate from that place. But we often, as a species, will take things personally
because of past traumas.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, once we do that deeper inner work to really like get to the root cause of where is this coming from? Like, where is me taking this personally actually coming from? And we heal that root cause, we're going to have a lot more peace throughout our lives.
And that's all I want for you and me and everybody else.
Yeah.
Is to be at peace with yourself and to live from a place of peace. And hopefully we can be at peace with everybody else as well. But I mean, that's not how life works. And everyone, again, has different perspectives, which is okay. But you can be at peace with the fact that other people have different perspectives and be okay with that. And not take it personally or take offense to somebody wanting to live their life the way that they'd like to live their life.
100%. I think that's another like beautiful reason that we should just connect to our own bodies and our own selves and really, find that peace within. Because from my own experience, it kind of comes back to what you said about, being more of a minimalist and not needing so much stuff. Like, I found that I used to want these things, like you said, keeping up with the Joneses, and like, I got to have the latest, greatest, this and that. And that came from an emptiness, like I was trying to fill a need within me that wasn't met. And then once I filled that need within myself, and I'm like, I feel more fulfilled just sitting on my yoga mat and like connecting to my body and breathing. And I realize like, you're like, I have everything I need within me right now. And the thing that I want most in life is actually just human connection. It's not stuff. And even if you think you want stuff, it's usually going to be for a reason of like, so that other people value me more, so that I have this status, and then people will respect me, right? Then I'll be able to connect with the people I want to connect with. That's the lies that we tell ourselves.
Yeah. And in that situation, are you attracting the right people? Right.
Probably not.
Because if you are just keeping up with the Joneses and needing to have the nice house and to be looked at as someone with a certain status, then it's going to be painful. Like, no wonder. What comes to mind right now is all of the you hear about like women who drink wine every night. And again, no judgment, but like, if you need to drink alcohol every night, it's probably that you're trying to numb some sort of pain that you
Mm-hmm.
need to disassociate from your workday or your busyness of being a mom or running a household or whatever that may be. But and again, no judgment. Like, it is what it is, and it's I'm not trying to make it a bad thing. It's, again, are those people taking responsibility for their inner feelings, like, and for the things that are bubbling up within their system, or are they pacifying it with even just with one glass of wine a night?
Totally. And I think, yeah, if we can identify what is the root, what is like the need here? And if the need is to unwind, right? We could say to regulate the nervous system.
Yep.
And okay, that's your coping mechanism to get that need met. But is that actually a healthy coping mechanism?
Hmm.
Is it causing more damage and pain in your life if you
Hmm.
were to really get honest with it? Or what's a healthier way that we can get that need met? And maybe if you were to, okay, so let's say you are somebody who is using wine as like a coping mechanism to deal with that stressful day. And that's just where you're at. You're doing the best you can with what you know, have compassion for yourself.
Hmm.
But I would encourage you to just lay down and close your eyes and do some deep breathing for 10 minutes. Really get connected to your body, find that sense of safety. And then ask yourself, do I still want the wine?
Hmm.
And maybe not. And that could be amazing.
Hmm. Or maybe you do, and that's okay too. It's I mean, I definitely would enjoy a glass of wine from time to time. Um, I think I just know too much too about toxins and how they work in the body and how that stuff accumulates. It's like, is the trade-off worth it?
Mm-hmm.
Where my logical brain goes to. But there, again, some of us just don't know how to turn off. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, then if we try to turn off, sometimes what happens is then we start to feel. And then all of those feelings trying to flood in at once is overwhelming. And then it's just like, okay, give me the wine.
Mm-hmm.
And then, eventually that one glass turns into a bottle. And, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Like, we do live in a world where you are more stimulated and more stressed out than we are supposed to be, like, than your body has been created to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so no wonder people need to cope.
Totally.
And all I think that we're suggesting here is that there are other ways to take responsibility for the stressors in your life, to where you can consciously choose to have a glass of wine because you just would really like to have one, instead
Mm-hmm.
of maybe unconsciously having a glass of wine and maybe having a second or a third, or because you are so overwhelmed from your day, you just need to switch off, put on a good rom-com and disassociate.
Mm-hmm. Because you might
And
feel better in the moment, but is it really healing? Is it really taking care of what's actually going on underneath?
well, and like we said, all that stuff gets trapped in your body. So if you're not dealing with it, it's just compounding. So, I mean, that right there to me sounds like a recipe for chronic illness down the path. Is like, if you're constantly suppressing your feelings and then drowning them in some toxins, over time, over years, you could create yourself an illness for sure, because you're compounding toxins and trauma in the body. And so, again, not saying that having a glass of wine is a bad thing. I think that it's like being able to recognize, um, maybe you have a practice where you come home every day and you practice some embodiment and you get into your body and you let some energy emotion, energy in motion. You help to move some of that so it doesn't stagnate, it doesn't stack up and compound, so that you feel like you need to disassociate.
Yeah, exactly. That's all it is, really. Like
Mm-hmm.
on that song and just let your body shake and move.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or get on the yoga mat.
Regardless of how ridiculous you may look or how good of or bad of a dancer. And I mean, moms or dads out there, please do this with your children. Just put on some music and shake your day off and be silly and encourage your kids to do that,
Yeah,
because I think future generations will be better because of it, as well as like your child's experience of life now.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, back to the wine again, too. It's like the wine is just a neutral tool, right? It's a neutral thing. And it's all about the intention behind it,
Mhm.
right? So if we're choosing to, because again, I think everything's like love or fear, those are the two main choices that we have.
Yep.
If you choose to consume that wine from a place of love, you're like, okay, I'm going to connect with a bunch of friends I haven't seen in a while. I'm going to, this is going to enhance my evening.
Mhm.
Great. But if it's coming from the fear place of like, I'm afraid of all these feelings that are coming up and I don't want to feel them and I'm stressed out, then that's where it becomes detrimental, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It all comes back to, again, being curious about what's making you tick. Is the love making you tick, or is the fear making you tick?
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, your ego will hide and will avert you in every way possible. So that's the trick here, is that like your ego will be like, there's not a problem here. Having a glass of wine is not a problem. We're good. We just want to wind down. It's no problem.
Yeah.
Because your ego is trying to keep you safe.
Yeah. And the ego doesn't like change, right? But
Exactly.
this is
So,
comfortable. This is my habit.
and this is why it can be hard to learn and grow, is because you have to constantly challenge that conditioning that has kept us safe.
Yeah.
And you need to challenge it with, maybe I know better than what was wired into my system in those first 7 years of life.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's why it comes back down to choice. Because let me tell, I used to fall asleep. I have been like a student of life, like the constant personal growth junkie, learning. And I mean, I think looking back, a lot of that was nervous system dysregulation. And now that I know that, I can take responsibility for it. But I actually used to go to courses to learn about growth and, responsibility, all these things we're talking about. And I would get so tired. I would constantly yawn. I remember I would be asked questions, and like, I literally would be, and I'm not the kind of person who falls asleep when learning, but if it was challenging my ego, my body was like, go to sleep. You're not interested. It is very funny and interesting and fitting, the way that ego aversion can creep up in your body
Yeah.
and make you like try to distract you to look in the opposite direction, or to justify what you're feeling or not feeling, or justify nudging you in a different direction. And it takes a while to start to realize and recognize the sneaky things your ego can start doing to try to keep you safe.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you gotta be able to notice so you can choose better.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
tricky beast.
Absolutely.
And the ego's not a bad thing. Like, I think the ego gets a bad rep in a lot of ways. People are looking to dissolve their ego, and it's you need your ego. I mean, without your ego, you would not be able to tie your shoelaces. Like, your ego is important, but it's also important to be able to recognize that it's not necessarily in control.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
That you can thank it. That's the great thing, is noticing when something pops up and going, oh, thank you. Thank you for trying to keep me safe. But I think I'm gonna choose differently. So, and it's again, noticing when those feelings come up and being like, because you can feel them in your body, it like resonates through you. And then being like, oh, this is coming up because I don't know, because dad forgot to pick me up when I was a kid. He was 5 minutes late when I was in kindergarten, and I have abandonment issues because of that. Like, it doesn't have to be a capital T trauma. You literally can have abandonment issues because a parent forgot to pick you up 5 minutes and you were a little kid in kindergarten being like, blink, blink, where's daddy? Right? And that stuff can bubble up now in life to keep you safe. And it's being able to recognize like, oh, I see you. Thank you so much for trying to keep me safe, but I'm good. I'm good. Pat yourself on the back. Thank you, ego, for doing such a good job. But it's like, I don't necessarily like the term reparenting, but it's like, that's kind of what this is, like being able to recognize that you can take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not necessarily reparenting like you need new parents. I think that's what that term doesn't necessarily resonate for me, but the fact that you can notice that you might need some extra parenting or a shift in parenting, and how we as adults can do that for ourselves by stepping into that power instead of needing to change it, right? Because like our parents, again, did the best they could do with the tools that they had. And from an evolutionary standpoint, the more we've been on this planet, the better tools we've had. So our parents now don't have as good of tools as we did when they were our age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Wow. There's so many things we covered, but I think to kind of like sum it all up, what I've been hearing a lot is like we need to start with connecting to our body. So whether that's like movement, breath work, embodiment, that's like number one, right? Creating that safety within, learning to regulate our emotions and take responsibility for the things in our lives that have happened, right? And knowing that we have a choice, and that gives us, an empowered perspective where we then get to choose more things of what we do want and the experiences that we want to have in our lives. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of self-study, self-realization, self-actualization, self-responsibility. I mean, there's a lot of selves there, but yeah, it's I mean, really at the end of the day, it's connecting to love.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Because when we're in pain stems from fear.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's a really nice way to, just kind of bring it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And really, like, we are just returning to figure out how to love ourselves and to lead by example for everybody else. And I mean, but we're not doing it for everybody else. And this is the thing, it's not selfish. You're doing it for yourself so that you can have the best life that you possibly can. And going back to alignment, just tying a pretty little bow on that, you will never be aligned with your community and with your people if you don't know who you are. And you will not know who you are unless you go through these processes of self-reflection, self-study, self-actualization, and self-responsibility. And this is, I think, when you've got like one person in a group who gets like really focused on growth and then starts to realize like they start stepping into that power of like, this is what's good for me. And then other people get pissed off about it. And it's like, it's because you're not aligned. And we've just been taught that you need to pacify that with like being a people pleaser. Right. And it's not a bad thing, but this is what happens when you grow. You outgrow other people. And that can be sad, but you find new people who speak your language, and, maybe you're going to keep growing and you'll continue to outgrow people. Like, I've outgrown my family, and doesn't make me love them any less. Right. But they don't speak my language, and that's okay. And yeah, Martina, I feel like I could talk forever, but and it all comes back down to love and alignment. And we have been conditioned to not put an importance on either.
Yeah, you're so right.
And I think if we want to live a joyful, peaceful life, you need to seek out love and alignment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. So well said. Beautiful. Well, yeah, we probably should start wrapping it up here. I know we could just make like a 5-hour podcast, but
We could do a second episode someday.
absolutely, anytime. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for all that. It's been very, very insightful. And I'm sure people are going to maybe start questioning some things and in a good way, right? Healthy way so we can always continue to learn and grow and evolve. But yeah, where can our listeners further connect with you?
I am on Instagram at Jenna McInnes. My website is jennamcinnes.com. My partner, Chris Daniels, and I are just about to launch a new company where we do all sorts of biohacking stuff for dogs called the Wolf Merchant. So we'll probably be pretty focused there in the next little while. The idea is like taking all of the stuff that we do for humans and kind of educating people on how you do it for your pets, which is super exciting. So we are www.thewolfmerchant.com. We are at the Wolf Merchant on Instagram. And I think that everything is set up to flow over onto Facebook, but as a rule for me, I'm really only on one platform. So it's just literally copy and paste itself. So
amazing.
But yeah, we're around. If you have any questions or if you're curious or you want to carry on the conversation about what Martina and I were talking about today, like I'm always open to perspective. And I hope you are too.
Yes, amazing. Yeah, we'll link all those in the show notes. You can just click over and check it all out. But yeah, I'm super excited to see how this goes for you guys at the Wolf Merchant. That's awesome.
Thanks. We're so excited too.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I mean, once we start learning how to take care of ourselves as humans, and then we have these pets that we love as well, like how can we give them the best lives possible?
Yes.
Optimizing their health and wellness.
Yeah. And well, if you think about it, like pets are forced into your environment. So whereas you and I can choose what environment we want to live in, and we can choose whether we have air filtration system or clean water or, grass-fed meat and good organic veggies. It's really marketed that our pets just, eat kibble for the rest of their lives and go outside for a walk twice a day. And so we're really trying to reframe that and help people understand how to take care of their pets better. To shift that perspective a little bit. And in turn, for some people, it'll probably help them learn how to take care of themselves better too, because really a lot of it comes down to, like I was saying, like air and water filtration and EMF mitigation and clean environments. And if you think about if you wash your floor with toxic cleaner and then your pet's bare skin, like their paws walk over it, they absorb 7 times more toxins than we do. Wow. And so at least they innately have built in the shake it off mental emotional trauma thing. Like they've got that part down. They don't need help. I can't really help with that. Besides the fact that, they could have nervous system dysregulation from toxic exposure, but it's like, how do you then give your pet the other tools so that it can live its longest, best, greatest life? Because I don't know about you, but like I wish my dog would live forever. She is just the greatest little beast. And I think most people who have pets, just want to do the best by them, but don't necessarily know what they could be doing outside of what they've been conditioned to just feed their dog kibble and take them for a walk twice a day.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is great.
Yeah. So I'm really excited. We're really excited to share all about that. And yeah, we live in a world where I think it's becoming more well known that like the prevalency of toxins. And I mean, we're in Canada, so we can't access the Environmental Working Groups network. But in the States, you can go to the ewg.org, I think it is, and type in any postal code, I guess it's a zip code in the States, or city, and it will tell you exactly what is in their drinking water or their tap water. And let me tell you, I went on there and I spent some time in the States. So I just pulled a bunch of names out of my head and typed in places, and every single place was in the red.
Oh, wow.
Every single place. So you're doing a disservice to your body, let alone your dog's body, if you're not filtering your tap water and your shower water. And again, not from a place of fear. That's just a piece of information. So if you would love to step into love for yourself in that situation, you need to take responsibility for it. So what does that mean? Putting a filter in your shower and on your tap.
Yeah.
And I mean, just to link that in with what we were talking about today, all comes back down to love. Love, intention, responsibility, peace, all those great things. But thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you.
Great conversation.
Yeah, it was lovely. Thanks all for listening.